Canon Entertainment. Throughout our first decade, we've delivered with stars that light up the sky, films that sizzle, action too hot to handle, and drama to burn up the night.
Hi, I am Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, and you are listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
We're charged for excitement and looking forward to another decade of blockbusters. So look to Canon for the future. Canon Entertainment. We're moving forward.
Let's start with Life Force.
In the tail of Halley's Comet, there's something wrong. Something ancient. Something evil.
Jesus.
Houston, we have a problem.
Something's happening to me.
Something hungry that's brought to Earth. Life Force.
Close your eyes.
Visited you how?
In my mind.
Let it go! It's already spreading. You didn't stop it. It's too late.
Come. Be with me.
Life Force. The terror has just begun.
I had a couple of questions about it, but I'm just going to throw them all out because it really comes down to this. What the fuck is this movie?
Well, I mean, if you want to believe Canon's advertising, it is the sci-fi event of the 1980s. One of two movies that they described that way. They tried that tagline over again for Master Universe in some of their ads, because clearly Life Force was not the sci-fi event. Maybe this one will be.
Right.
But yeah, it is a movie that Canon had been trying to make for actually quite a while, for as long as Golan was there. When they bought the company in 1979, one of the first sets of ads that they put out, because that's the first thing they did, then that's something they continue to do, buy out these giant sections of the trade magazines, either Variety or Hollywood Reporter, some of the foreign magazines. But Life Force was in there. But in that point, it was just Space Vampires, which is what it was called in a lot of the world. It's a better title for it. But it was based on a novel by Colin Wilson, and originally it was going to star Klaus Kinski, which I would have loved to see like a 1979 version of Space Vampires with Klaus Kinski. There's another parallel universe out there where that version of the movie exists, and it was made for $1.5 million in Germany or something.
It would be a very loud movie.
yeah. But it's a movie that they spent years advertising. I have a lot of these magazines around in my office, and it's in the 1980 catalog, the 81 catalog, the 82 catalog. Finally, Hooper came off of Poltergeist, kind of riding high on a very successful film, and Canon approached him. And he met with Golan, and he had said, I want to get you in. I want to bring you into the Canon family. I want you to direct Space Vampires. So Golan gave him this like very bent up, beat up paperback and gave it to Tobe Hooper. It's like, what do you want to do? What is your project? And Tobe Hooper threw at him a remake of Invaders from Mars, which was a science fiction movie. So a lot of these horror directors kind of made these tribute films. And I think of John Carpenter with The Thing. Like, The Thing is a movie that scared him as a kid, and he got to remake it. That was kind of Toby's 50s sci-fi movie he wanted to make. And of course, Menachem loved Invaders from Mars. I'm sure he saw every movie that played in Israel in the 50s, knew instantly, and he said, let's do it, 3-picture deal. And Toby ended up reading Space Vampires, I think, like right after that meeting, and because the deal was put together fast, and he liked the book and he had ideas for it, and it was matched his sensibilities. So the 3-picture deal became Space Vampires, soon to become Life Force, Invaders from Mars, and the third one was going to be Spider-Man. because Tobe Hooper had Canon had just acquired Spider-Man, the rights to Spider-Man from Marvel. So Tobe Hooper was going to make Spider-Man. We almost lived in a universe where we got a Sam Raimi and a Tobe Hooper Spider-Man, which is pretty amazing. But Life Force was the first movie, and it's got a dream team, a sci-fi sort of dream team of the 80s.
Yeah. Really, and it shows because the effects are very impressive. I think it's well directed. Like, one thing I really liked about the film was its pacing. Like that opening scene with how quickly they get the astronauts into the spaceship and back to Earth. Like any other movie, that's like a 45-minute ordeal, but it was like edited very well. So I was enjoying it, but when I got to the end of the movie, I just kept thinking, like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Right. It was a movie, yeah. Because you have John Dykstra on the special effects. You have Nick Maley designing all the monsters and creatures, all the makeup effects and all the animatronics. Who designed, I mean, he worked on Yoda, he worked on Star Wars and Empire, designed the Cantina band in Star Wars. So cool. You had Dan O'Bannon of Alien fame and Dark Star writing the movie. And you have Henry Mancini doing the score, like doing the sweeping, and it's a movie where everything is done in camera. They built a giant, like they used a giant miniature set of London for a lot of these things. A lot of these creatures that they built. There's very famously a creature that sort of sits up on the table and drains, and it ends up morphing and draining somebody. It's this really wonderful sequence, and that is a machine. There's an interview in the book with Nick Maley where he talks about it took 23 puppeteers and 3 computers, just all of them, because it's all things that make the hands move and eyes move and face move, and the most complicated animatronic puppet ever used on film. Wow. It was a very expensive movie, but and unfortunately, it's also a very strange movie.
Right.
And it was something that one of Toby's regrets, and he did a lot of interviews for, excuse me, for Invaders from Mars and Texas 2, is that they let him change the title, or he let them change the title. He had wanted to call it Space Vampires. I think Space Vampires kind of better tonally for what Life Force is. It's him doing this sort of throwback horror, almost like one of the Hammer or Quatermass films. Kind of a tribute to those.
Yeah.
And
especially with the British cast, that would sort of fit.
Right. Yeah, it's something that if it were called Space Vampires, you kind of go in there with this attitude that it's going to be a little weird. It's going to have a main villain who is a girl who's naked for most of her screen time, what little screen time she has. He let them change it, and I think because Canon thought that they had something that was not so much a big crowd pleaser. I think they thought of it more as a 2001 A Space Odyssey or something, rather than so Toby had wanted to call it Space Vampires. It was released as Space Vampires in a lot of the world, but when they came out and they're like, let's change it to Life Force, it'll get a different crowd, we'll get a more serious crowd, and he let them do it, and he regretted it. But
and it initially, to some people, Space Vampires might sound like a really dumb title, but RoboCop was a big hit. And that, if you don't have the context of the movie in hindsight, that's the dumbest title you could have for a film. So,
that's a fantastic comparison.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's what I just think of. It's just like, it's Space Vampires sounds dumb to us because that's not what happened. Have you read the book? Do you know what it was that appealed so much to both Menachem and Toby? Like, was there a reason that this was the story that they had wanted to make for so long?
I've never read an exact reason why they loved it so much.
Yeah.
I do think probably because it's a little dirty. I'm sure that was part of the appeal. there was, at least for Menachem, I can't speak for the Toby. I'm sure there are people that know better than myself, but at least in terms of Menachem, I think he saw this
Sort
kind
of,
of
sort of
alien
an
invaders.
R-rated.
Sci-fi, and maybe initially they were. Do you know if they were thinking? Well, how could we know? But maybe they were thinking that they would initially film it on a cheaper budget, and
Again,
I don't know.
if they had gotten it out when they originally announced it, I think it would have been about a $1.5 million movie,
Sure.
starring Klaus Kinski, directed
Right.
by Boaz Davidson. It would have been something along the lines of Schizoid or New Year's Evil or something like that. I think it
Okay.
became a big movie when they got Tobe Hooper.
Right.